Good evening and welcome to See You at USC. I'm your Monday night host, Alexia Narcisse, and I'm here tonight for my final episode, not only with See You at USC, but also here for my tenure at USC. It's been a fantastic road, and we are ending on a high note. I am here today with Metro Planning Chief Therese McMillan. Stay tuned. We are back with Metro Planning Chief Therese McMillan. How are you today?
I am fine. How are you?
Fantastic.
Good.
Now, what I would like to know initially is how you ended up where you are today, because you are in a very powerful position. You're making so many immense, just fantastic moves and changes to our transportation system. So how did you end up where you are today?
How did I start in transportation? Well, it's been quite an interesting road, and probably one that most people wouldn't think about. I grew up in Los Angeles. I think that's important. So for me, getting this job, I'm kind of coming
back home.
full circle coming home. Went to St. Mary's Academy in Inglewood and went to UCLA for 2 years. And one of the things that was very interesting, I think, for anyone who's been an Angelino, right, you perfect the ability to get anywhere in the city without taking the freeway, right? So you sort of grow up in Los Angeles with this idea of traveling sort of ingrained in, you know, who you are and where you go and
How
that
you
type of
think
thing.
and process things.
Exactly. So when I went to UCLA, one of the first things that was different for me was I started out taking the bus. So I took a bus from the Fox Hills Mall down the 405 to campus, and that was a really interesting experience. And so I really started thinking a little bit more about public transportation because I was going a much longer distance. All of that is to say, I went to UCLA for 2 years, but then made it up in my mind I was going to be a veterinarian.
Wow, okay, this is a
Yes,
curveball
exactly.
that I wouldn't have expected.
So went to UC Davis to be a vet, and went through and was doing all the, you know, the physics and the chemistry and the sciences and all that. And then, like many people who have been in the medical profession, took organic chemistry.
I've heard
And
that
then
it's
said,
brutal.
You know, I like dogs and cats, but not quite that much. And interestingly, you know, my challenge then was I was a junior. I think had pretty much finished my junior year, and did not want to start over. So I was looking for a major that would use all these science credits that I had.
Okay.
And UC Davis had started a new major called Environmental Policy Analysis and Planning. And because of the environmental focus, you needed a lot of the science work. So I got into that major, and to fast reel, you know, a really interesting long story, one of the things that one of my professors did was get me an internship with the California Transportation Commission in Sacramento.
Wow.
Which was the major policy body overseeing, you know, transport policy, you know, for the state of California. And that summer internship led to, you know, an extended internship for a year, which then put me on a path to apply to planning school. So I went to Cal.
Wow.
Went to UC.
Okay. All this through an internship,
exactly.
by the way.
Yeah,
So
pretty much.
incredible.
So if it hadn't, you know, if I'd done better in organic chemistry, I might be taking care of dogs and cats. But as it turns out, I got on a path toward transportation and have loved it for the over 30 years I've been involved. Yeah.
That's incredible. So I understand that you were working at a federal level as well. How did you end up doing that? Because that's a big...
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, once I graduated from Cal, University of California, Berkeley, I did a dual degree in transportation in city and regional planning and civil engineering. And then worked at the Metropolitan Transportation Commission, major regional transportation agency, and worked there for 25 years. But one of the interesting things that I had the opportunity to do there was to serve on a number of study groups or research projects, many of whom were based in Washington, D.C. And when you participate in those, you tend to meet people in the industry. And when the Obama administration came in, and I've learned all this to some degree in hindsight, there's a vast array of political appointees that are nominated. Everyone from the cabinet secretaries down to the scheduler that might work for a cabinet secretary. I mean, there's thousands of political appointees. But this isn't a job application, you find out. Normally, either you've worked on a campaign, or in my case, one of the transition team of folks in the White House who are trying to identify people to fill in these higher level positions knew me from one of these study groups and admired my work.
Excellent.
And so I got literally a call out of the blue saying, hey, would you like to throw your hat in the ring working for US DOT for the Federal Highway Administration?
Wow.
I know, it was pretty crazy. My first reaction was, oh my goodness, I still have a daughter who's in high school. I would leave California, move to Washington.
Oh, uprooter, this is
right.
for you.
Exactly, and my husband pretty much said, you've been asked to work for the Obama administration. I think you should. Exactly. Well, not so much in the White House, but certainly this incredible opportunity, once in a lifetime. And had an interview with the Secretary of Transportation, and they thought I was a good fit. So I worked actually in the Federal Transit Administration. That was where I got placed.
Okay.
I was the deputy there for about 4 years.
Wow.
And then for the last 2 years that I was there, I ran the agency as the acting administrator. So it was amazing.
What
amazing
is that
opportunity.
like, managing such a huge team and a massive budget? Because from what I understand, your budget was about $10 billion, if not more.
Yeah. Well, one interesting thing was the Federal Transit Administration was actually pretty small. We only had about, I want to say, 550 or so employees throughout the entire country, about 320 in Washington, and then we have 10 regional
scattered.
then 10 regional offices throughout the country. So, for example, there's one in San Francisco that does the western area, and a LA office here, because California is pretty important, we like to say. But all that said, the scale of developing federal policy was at once incredibly exciting and incredibly humbling. I mean, when you think about it, I used to, in speeches, say, I had to make policy for Lexington, Massachusetts, Lexington, Kentucky, and Lexington, North Carolina, and I didn't even know there was a Lexington, North Carolina, right? So when you're thinking about developing programs that will work in Fargo, North Dakota, or Atlanta, or Detroit, Phoenix, the Red Rose Transit System in Pennsylvania, I mean, you begin to realize this country is so big and it's so diverse and the needs are so different that trying to craft policies, programs, investment choices across this broad array is really hard. It's not easy.
Imagine.
And when you're sort of on the other side, like now, working for LA Metro, you view federal policy from the point of view of what is it going to do for me? What is it going to do for my projects? And you sort of naturally develop this more focused lens. When you're there, you're suddenly on the other side going, whoa, entire United States. And it was incredibly rewarding, very challenging, and a huge educational experience that I will treasure.
No, I'm assuming that you greatly depend on your team because they know their cities so well. So what is that like, working with such a vast array of individuals from so many different places and trying to manage that communication?
That's a really interesting question. One of the reasons that I felt our team worked really well was that we were relatively small. So I knew everyone, on the 4th and 5th floors of the U.S. Department of Transportation.
It's Billy's birthday,
right?
and Mike's getting married today.
That makes a difference. Our regional offices, Our regional offices were very much focused, though, on sort of a geographic sector. So, for example, our Region 4 office covered the South, basically, including Puerto Rico. And our Region 9 office, centered here in the West Coast, covered, California, Nevada, Arizona, Hawaii.
So everything on this whole
exactly,
coast.
pretty much, except for the Pacific Northwest, which was 10, which like had Alaska. So we had these 10 regions that divided the country up, and they were the ones who, for example, we would develop the core policy in Washington, D.C. They would be working with the transportation agencies to implement it. And when you really work with a small transit agency, say in Fargo, North Dakota, you know everyone personally in terms of, what they're doing, and you develop the relationships. Outside of that, though, one of the things that was very important, again, not just for my agency certainly, but I think all of the federal agencies, they were very much beginning to get into social media as ways to outreach. Technology was a very big focus. And there was almost never enough information you could get out. Let's just put it that way.
No, I'm also curious just as to the fact that technology is really changing the landscape in which we consume everything in regards to transportation, even when it comes to policy enforcing not driving and using your phone, or texting and Snapchatting, taking pictures while you're driving. So I'm wondering, are you guys working in, and not only in Los Angeles and what you're doing now, but what you were doing federally, in kind of changing the landscape of how we incorporate technology into policy? Or is it something that hasn't been as addressed yet? Because I know that there's like the conversation of like autonomous cars.
Yeah, exactly.
And no one really wants to touch on it quite yet, but we know it's going to have to be, it's going to be a forced conversation.
Well, it exactly is. And I think what we're beginning to appreciate is the challenge of technology happening at a rate that's faster than what the public sector policy and regulatory framework can do to catch up, and it's a huge issue. So, autonomous cars, that was an issue that Secretary Anthony Fox, who was the second U.S. DOT secretary with the Obama administration, he had a very keen focus on technology and how we could position ourselves to be more nimble, because the private sector certainly was sort of no holds barred, get stuff out there as quickly as possible. And I think it is one of our great challenges, and one that LA Metro is taking very seriously, which is how do we catch up and how do we keep up, and in fact, where can we lead? And our CEO, Phil Washington, I think was a guest on this show at one point. He developed an Office of Extraordinary Innovation, focus, among other things, on how we do things differently, how can we take advantage of technology, how can we push the envelope of how things usually are done, whether it's project delivery or developing a new app for someone to use our bus system more easily, the whole array. So,
incredible.
Yeah, it's pretty exciting.
We'll be back after this break to talk a bit more. Stay tuned. With Metro Planning Chief Therese McMillan. I don't know why I keep saying that, but it's a tongue twister because you get Chief and then Therese.
Exactly.
So we just prior talked about how you ended up to where you are now within your career, and I want to talk a bit about Measure M in regards to Los Angeles and what your team is planning to do and moving forward with that.
I don't think it's an inaccurate statement to say that Measure M has changed everything. It is so foundational in terms of a couple of things. One, it was a huge program. There's no sunset, so basically this is a increase in the tax dedicated to transportation that goes on until the voters might decide to stop it, but hopefully not. It was passed by over 71% of the LA voters, which is just an extraordinary number. I mean, there was a number of what we call these sales tax measures that happened, during that November election time, and ours was by far the biggest.
Massive.
And I think with, if not the highest clearance of passage, very, very near the top. So it was an extraordinary thing. I think it brings with it, though, this extraordinary accountability, right? I mean, the voters were pretty much saying, we believe you, Metro, can take this revenue source, which, round numbers estimated to be $120 billion over 40 years. That's how big. I mean, the sales tax base of LA is so huge that we can generate revenue streams that exceed what some states could see, right?
Oh my gosh, wow.
And for us, I think the challenge is to manage the expectations that for all of this new capacity, we still can't solve every mobility problem in this county. So how do we go about delivering on the promise of Measure M? And the entire LA Metro team owns this. And I think, I know I can say from this, I feel it every day in terms of what this means, not also in isolation, it's just a pivot point for enabling a lot of new thinking, new partnerships. One of the exciting things that I'm doing with the planning department is developing an entirely new way to approach our next long-range transportation plan. Like, how can we think about envisioning the future in a different way and realizing, among other things, the one thing that you absolutely know is that you don't know what exactly is going to happen in the future, right? So it's this notion of being nimble enough to think about different futures, how to get there, get more information along the way, sort of like a sail tacking with the wind, as you see
catching information as
but
as you
still moving toward a set of goals of ultimately moving the 10 million people that live here in Los Angeles County in a way that's more efficient, that's safer, that's more effective, and connecting them to the things they want to do every day. So with something that basic of, a broad objective, it's figuring out a way to lead, recognizing that there's a lot of other partners, whether it be advocacy groups, the business community, local elected officials for the 88 cities that are in LA County, and the county itself, and our customers. I think it's really important that Measure M at the end of the day is about serving our customers. And our customers is anyone who, uses our transportation system or is impacted by it. And I don't take that lightly. I really don't. And it's exciting to be a part of this team.
Oh, of course. Now I'm curious as to within your position, this is the Los Angeles County, which is massive. I mean, like you said, the budget that you guys are working with now based on Measure M is just extensive. There's so much to work with. And in moving towards the future, and working under a government system, I've worked in government before, and I understand that it's so slow. I mean, as an intern, it's different because we're not really doing anything hands-on. And I was working with NASA in science, and everything is so, you have to put in something, you have to wait to get a response, it's got to go up a level, someone's got to look at it, it's sitting on someone's desk. So what is that like within your structure? Do you guys have the autonomy to really change things and spin it around, or is there still this series of like chains and of command that you have to go through?
It depends.
Okay, I like that.
We were no, and seriously, I think that depending on the issue, depending on are you dealing with, for example, a funding source that you completely control, or are you trying to match and leverage something from the federal government or the state government? There's a lot of different environments within which this decision making happens. What I would say is that we were talking about innovation and new technology, and one of the really important innovations is doing business differently. How can we, on the one hand, involve our affected constituencies in a meaningful way, not just, fill out this form or show up at this meeting and have a 2-minute card that you fill out at, a board committee meeting or a full board, and we need something more than that. And yet realize that we need to get projects out and on the street serving the public.
Yes.
So you need to make decisions, you need to act on them, and you need to carry them out. And so one of the dances, I like to say, one of the things I found very interesting working in the public sector is really owning that balance of meaningful engagement and at the same time the accountability of making decisions and, owning that effort and that consequence.
Yeah. Now I have to ask this, but I'd love to know, what do you describe your leadership style as?
Very participatory. I've said very many times in mentoring opportunities and speeches and the like, that I never viewed myself as the smartest person going into the room. What I could bring was, I think, 3 important things. One, the ability to listen. That's a skill in communication that very often people take for granted. And if you're going to be a good leader, it's something you really develop and you use in a very, I think, responsible and effective way. Like active listening. Like what is, not necessarily what am I hearing, but what's being intended by that. So I try, to bring that into my interactions and working with people. I'm very much a team person, getting out of your silo, working across, learning together. No one has the corner on the best idea, at least in my view. I want to hear all the ideas, and very often it's that synergy of everyone's ideas that can come up with a solution. So, and at the end of the day, respect for the people that are there. I've said it's just as important to remember someone's birthday as the memo you need to get out the door, because you are working with these people sometimes more than your own family in terms of your time. And so you have to work with respect and, know them as, people first, and then you sort of your employees or your team.
Behind that.
Yeah, behind that, yeah.
Now, this is one of my biggest questions that I have to ask before we finish, but in working as the Metro Planning Chief and in the U.S. Department of Transportation, the Federal Transit Administration, so many different things, so many different experiences that you've, of course, built up in who you are. What do you foresee your legacy being?
I hope a couple of things, and I'll speak to some things that that were important to me when I left the Federal Transit Administration, and what I would hope to do with LA Metro. One is to do good things for the people we serve. To help be a part of this greater team at LA Metro that can deliver meaningful, substantive change for mobility to the people who live here. And that sounds sort of very lofty, but at the end of the day, that's what keeps you kind of going. But second, and just important, I want to leave my team and Metro a better place. That we as an agency become an agency, a group, actor in this public sector world that we work good as a team, we strive for excellence, and we respect each other. And so within the walls, sort of within the building, I hope to leave that legacy, as well as what we take outside to the people of Los Angeles.
That's spectacular. I have to thank you so much for your time today, for coming on.
It was a pleasure.
It has been incredible. This has been a fantastic season. A spectacular way for me to wrap up my 4-year tenure here at Trojan Vision. And at this moment, I'd like to bring out our production team. So those of you who watch the show can finally see these are the people behind the magic.
I'm
these
so
are
lucky
your
to
hard
be
work
here with everyone. Wow,
this is the greatest episode.
Yeah,
I mean, Incredible. We have had a fantastic time here. These are the people behind the magic. If you guys behind the cameras want to pop out real quick, I know it's rough, but if you want to pop your heads in right here, these are our camera people. These are the people that make the magic happen. I mean, to end on a fantastic note like this is incredible. So thank you all for your time, for your commitment to see you at USC.
It's great.
And this is our best guest. I mean, it can get no more exciting. A round of applause to all of you. You guys are fantastic. Thank you for tuning in to see you at USC for this past semester. It's been wonderful. And I'd love to say that I will see you again at USC, but I'll have to see you elsewhere as an alumnus. And tears to my eyes as well. So not the paycheck part, though. That'll be great. So I look forward to seeing you all next, well, never actually. Hopefully if I'm on the show ever again. And thank you all for tuning in. Have a great night.
Good night.